Technology tells me that we are ready to roll. So I'm Jon Dreazen, lay leader for today's service. Topic near and dear to my heart, which is medicine, but also influences of God, past and present. We welcome you in spirit, in physical presence, or online to the Pottstown Universalist Fellowship, UUFP. We are a liberal, free-thinking congregation, as is the characteristic of UUs. Even with recent events in our country, we continue to hopefully believe in the inherent worth of all people and their dignity, and we'll try to adhere to that in the years to come. So I welcome you to be with us today. Do we have any announcements with regard to the fellowship?
Hi, I'm Linda. I just wanted to make everybody aware and invite you to a sharing circle that we will be having after the service at about 11:45, or whenever the service ends. It gives you time to visit the facilities, grab some coffee and a snack, and we'll gather back in here. The purpose is to develop a community for people to share their perspectives on the election outcomes. And hopefully, as we talked about last week, one of our shared values is transformation, which is how do we now face the reality, and what are the things that we can control, and how we transform without losing our values or our ethos or anything like that. So please, if you want to join us, if not, it's fair to just stay out there and talk to people.
Good morning, I'm Valerie. Our craft raffle is now live. I am selling raffle tickets. They are $2 each, so 5 for 10 or 12 for 20. There are now 20 gorgeous items on those tables. I had to come in on Thursday and set up a whole second table. I'm so excited. Everything is so beautiful. I'm going to be buying tickets myself to be putting in these jars. There's so many gorgeous things. There's one item missing I will put a sign for because I don't quite have it yet, but there will also be honey, a jar of honey coming from our hives here at the UFP. So come find me after, buy raffle tickets, support the church. Thank you.
Bill, quick question.
Yes.
If you buy a raffle ticket, you
Yes.
have 20 items. Explain to us, for everybody, how
Oh.
that ticket leads to the item you're gonna get.
Yes, so each item has a number assigned to it, which is pinned to it, and there's a jar right next to it with the same number on it. And you just will put your raffle ticket, so these say, they come in these pairs where it says ticket, and then it says keep this coupon. You keep the one so that you know what your number is. You just put the one that says ticket in the jar for any item that you want. You are free to, if there's one thing that you love and you have 12 tickets, you want to put all 12 tickets in that jar, go for it. It'll increase your chances. Or if you love everything, you can just put like a ticket in multiple jars. I like to do it. The drawing will be on December 15th. But I am writing down the numbers when you buy them so that if you're not here on the 15th, I can still contact you to let you know that you won. Any other questions? No? Okay, I'm gonna be making this announcement every week until the 15th. Sorry.
Good morning, I'm Sam. Cliff isn't here today, but just as a reminder, he's doing a cooking demo on Saturday, December the 7th from around 10 to 2. It's $25 donation, which stays with the church. He's going to be doing chocolate cake, chocolate torte, and I still don't know the third thing that he's doing. I keep forgetting, but anyway, it's just to let you know, it's a reminder that he will be doing it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Monica. Our bonfire is canceled for next weekend because of the fire ban right now. There might be a kid who would be that night, but I'm not 100% sure. So if you have kids, stay tuned with your emails. Okay.
I won't interrupt the sharing circle, but just a reminder, next week is our potluck. So if you haven't signed up already, please see me right before you join the sharing circle, or I will circulate in the social hall with the sign up, and it will eventually send it out via email. So I just didn't want to lose anybody today for potluck next week.
Okay, thank everybody for their announcements. As usual, I will strike the chime. To time, we hopefully transition, to use Alan Pillai's comment, from the world that we live in into the sacred space that we now occupy. If you have anything that makes noise like a pager or a mobile phone, please place it on vibrate and you'll still get notified, but it will not make intrusive noise during the service. It is now time for our chalice lighting. I'm sure somebody who's young will pop up and accomplish the task. There we go. The chalice lighting is number 448. I lost my glasses someplace, so I'll try to find them because they'll be valuable going forward. But I may have to stop and get up here. Anyway, our whole thing's very far away. So 448. We gather this hour as a people of faith, with joys, sorrows, and gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, a sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Tribute to Christine Robinson, and there's a chalice by her name, so that would indicate that she is one of us. So, consistent with my theme today of the interplay between God and medicine over the course of millennia, I'm going to read the original Hippocratic Oath. This is the oath that I took, as did many of my generation, many years ago, indicated our faithfulness to the practice of medicine. I'll keep it far away. That seems to work pretty well. I had my cataract surgery. I lost my myopia, my nearsightedness. I could see things very well right here. Now I see things very well over here, but not a whole lot in the middle. But hopefully this will go well. So this is a classic version. I swear by Apollo, physician, and Asclepius, and Hygeia, and Panacea, and all the gods and goddesses, making them my witnesses, that I will fulfill, according to my ability and judgment, this oath and this covenant. To hold him who has taught me this art as an equal to my parents, and to live my life in partnership with him. And if he is in need of money, to give him a share of mine, and to regard his offspring as equal to my brothers in male lineage, and teach them this art, if they desire to learn it, without fee and covenant, to give a share of precepts and oral instruction, and all the other learning to my sons and to the sons of him who has instructed me, and to pupils who have signed this covenant and have taken an oath according to the medical law, but no else. I will apply dietetic measures for the benefit of the sick according to my ability and judgment. I'll keep them from harm and injustice. I will neither give a deadly drug to anybody who asks for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. Similarly, I will not give to a woman an abortive remedy. Hold that thought. In purity, and this is a long time ago. In purity and holiness, I will guard my life and my art. I will not use the knife, not even on sufferers from stone, but will withdraw in favor of such men as are engaged in this work. Whatever house I may visit, I will come for the benefit of the sick, remaining free of all intentional injustice, of all mischief, and in particular, of sexual relations with both female and male. What I may see and hear in the course of the treatment, or even outside of this treatment in regard to the life of men, which on no account one must spread abroad. I will keep to myself holding such things shameful to be spoken aloud. If I fulfill this oath and do not violate it, may it be granted to me to enjoy life and art, being honored with fame among all men for all time to come. If I transgress it and swear falsely, may the opposite of this be my lot. And that is the oath that I took a long time ago. Obviously, it doesn't wear well with time, but the time in which it was written, and we'll talk a little bit more about Hippocrates shortly, it says a lot that is almost pertinent to how we practice medicine today. So our opening hymn, and I've tried to choose them in some consonance with my theme, is 114. You'll recognize that if you're from a Lutheran background, it's been really jiggered forward through the ages. Number 114, please stand as you are willing and able. Okay, I'm gonna have more of a conversation on a story for all ages. So any kids who want to come up with something to sit on, I'll sit on something carpet. And if I can't get up again, they'll rough me up. You might expect it to rain. Let's just be fun here. Okay, so I'm actually a doctor by trade. I'm the guy you can see. I'm a family doctor, so I take care of kids, adults, old people. And you're the kids. So we're gonna have more of a conversation about your thought about your doctor. So here's my first question. When of you have a strong opinion about the doctor you see who does your examinations, gives you pills when you're sick, and gives you shots? Any strong thoughts about your doctor? Good, bad? Right?
I haven't been into a doctor in like 2 years.
That's okay. We're in the no judgment zone here. No critique of parents. Any other thoughts about doctors, good or bad? You like them, you hate them, they torture you? Huh? Why so? At your age, a lot of pills. Okay, I'm not gonna ask any probing questions. We'll stick with medical doctors. Dentists are a whole other thing, and I have my opinion about those people who drill teeth. We have a comment from you.
I don't like getting shots.
Amen, brother. Any other comments about doctors? Let's talk again.
So Dr. Evil, I haven't been one in 2 years. I hate when
Parents have spoken there.
the blood pressure. I know it's simple work and a shot, but like it causes like constant pain when it squeezes too much.
Okay,
And I hate this.
okay, let's see. Oh, Mr. Ashman, come on, grab the mic. Yes.
I also hate having shots.
So my question is, do the shots hurt when they put the needle in your arm, or is it just you're afraid of the shot?
It hurts a lot.
Okay, but only for a short time, I hope.
Maybe.
Okay, I've heard worse.
I mean, you do get rewards after us kids.
All right, once again, that's Cyrus, I believe, right? Okay.
I think shots feel good.
His mom told me to expect that answer. We'll leave it there. Okay, so let me ask you a question. Aside from the pain and the torture, if you get a shot, do you know why? What the good part about it is getting a shot? We'll kind of, well, let's go back. We go left to right. Go ahead. Give me the answer. Why do we do shots?
To get healthier, and that's why I don't eat vegetables. I don't get healthier, and so do vegetables.
So many parents are gonna have to deal with this conversation. Everyone's afraid. Cyrus? And then pass it back to your.
They protect me from viruses and any sickness.
So do you like shots? Don't like shots? Do they ever help you?
Because they help you not die from you might die if you don't get a shot.
You're correct. Any other comments about shots before I make my 2 cents worth? Okay.
They need to check your blood.
Okay, let's take the blood out. That's okay. Different directions. One more comment, and I'm gonna get my last comment.
Basically, they add like antibiotics to your body. So, like for example, that's like kind of like the COVID shot, like to not get COVID or any shot, and to not get like any like viruses or sicknesses like flu.
So the purpose of the shots, as you talked about, is you want to build up something in your body called antibodies. You want to make your body make stuff in your blood that protects you so you don't get influenza, diphtheria, pertussis, whooping cough, polio, measles, mumps, chickenpox, rubella. The list goes on and on, meningitis. We want to make your body protect itself because we don't have good drugs for viruses. You get a virus, you're kind of, for the most part, on your own. Best thing we can do is let you protect yourself against the problem. And that's why we give you shots, not to hurt you, but because they're definitely very helpful. And I'm hoping, by the way, as I'll talk to the adults about it, I'm hoping your doctors spend time with you. I'm hoping they touch you, look you in the eye. When I practice my pediatric part of my practice, I always regarded the child as my patient. And I tell the mother or the father to be quiet. And I would try to talk to the child, so they felt that that's why they were there, that I was their doctor, not their parents' doctor at that moment in time. I'm hoping your doctors kind of look you in the eye and ask you some questions about how you feel when you come in for your examination. So with that commentary, let's please sing our kids to their classes where they may discuss what I've talked about or something different. Okay, I would ask if somebody can go get 2 baskets. They're probably in the front office. Okay, we'll do that while I do my usual blur here. We talk in our fellowship about 3 things that help us to function well, which are time, which is helping us out, talent, which we have a great deal of. People sing in the choir, they work in the garden, they keep the place clean, they make great things for our time after service, as we'll find out today. All healthy, I assure you. And we want some treasure, which is just a fancy way of saying that your contributions, both by pledge and what you donate today, will help us with the finances of the fellowship, which allows us to do more of our good deeds. And speaking of talent, Kay is obviously not our definite pianist, but we thank her for filling in until we fill the position. So my second reading is the more modern version of the Hippocratic Oath. It was written by the fellow who was the professor and head of pharmacology, study of drugs when I was in medical school in Rochester. His name is really Louis Lasagna. Maybe he's Italian, I'm not sure. He had been the dean of Tufts Medical School, and he wrote this during his tenure as the dean because he felt that the Hippocratic Oath, as I read it to you, was really kind of dated. And so this is the second version, which many medical schools use versions of that today. And you'll see it has a lot of parallelism to the one I read you before. I swear to fulfill to the best of my ability and judgment this covenant. I'll respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share knowledge as it is mine with those who are to follow. I'll apply for the benefit of the sick all measures which are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. I'll remember that there is art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. Very pertinent, by the way, to what I'm going to be talking about shortly. I will not be ashamed to say, I know not, nor will I fail to call on my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for the patient's recovery. I will respect the privacy of my patients, for their problems are not disclosed to me for the world to know. Most especially, I must tread with care in matters of life and death. If it is given to me to save a life, all thanks. But it may also be within my power to take a life. This awesome responsibility must be faced with great humbleness and awareness of my own frailty. Above all, I must not play God. I will remember that I do not treat a fever chart, a cancerous growth, but a sick human being whose illness may affect this person's family and economic stability. My responsibility includes these related problems if I'm adequately to care for the sick. Again, very pertinent to what I'm going to talk about shortly. I will prevent disease whenever I can, for prevention is preferable to cure. I'll remember that I remain a member of society with all obligations to all my fellow human beings, those sound of mind and body as well as the infirm. If I do not violate this oath, may I enjoy life and art, respected while I live and remembered with affection thereafter. May I always act so as to preserve the fine traditions of my calling, and may I long experience the joy of healing those who seek help. And this was written by Dr. Dreazen in 1964, at which time he was the academic dean of medicine at Tufts. And as I said, this is used rather widely today in various forms. I found another version at Dalhousie Medical School in Canada. My mother went there, I think, in a different venue many, many years ago. And they allowed the students every year to tweak this a little bit and actually recite something that they have had some input with. So moving on, this is talking about God and medicine. As I shared with some of you, I have this issue where I come out and talk to Lisa Jokio on the worship committee, and I said, hey, here's an idea that just came on my mind. I hadn't prepared anything. I wasn't looking to do a sermon, but I made the mistake of telling her. Well, it ferments, and about a month later, or at some point, it's like, hey, John, you're on the schedule. Can you do this date and do a sermon? It's like, okay. And as often happens, my topic ends up being a lot more broad than I had imagined it to be. So I'm going to try to condense millennia of medical history, which is part of what I'm talking about, and how people dealt with medical care going back to prehistoric times, so best as we understand it, and kind of where we got to today. And Dr. Lasagna's oath is very pertinent to the interplay between humanism and science. And I'm going to kind of go through the yin and the yang and over the yin of medicine as I go forth. And I think I can do this without having reading glasses. I was going to walk around a little bit, but I'm going to stay put here. So what we have to remember is that early mankind attributed a lot of things that happened to a higher power, a deity of some sort, because they had a belief that if you got ill or were injured or had a problem, you were being punished. There was an evil spirit going on because they knew nothing. We have to remember that they did not know anatomy, physiology. They hadn't dissected the human body. They didn't know where kidneys were. They had no idea about things that we take for granted today, even at a layman's level, as to what different parts of the body are doing. So we have to understand, and as we think about people, we should not critique them. We'll just say that's where they were at that time. I'll tell you, in my career in medicine, there were some things I first did 45 or 50 years ago, which today would be thought to be crazy because we've come farther in medicine. One example, for example, is putting every kid with ear pain on an antibiotic, which now is not done. It's like you wait 2 days because we know that 85% of them are caused by viruses. We've known that for a long time, but we still put people on antibiotics. Why? Because 50 years ago, a lot of kids with lesser antibiotics got infections in this bone called the mastoid, had surgery, but it took us a very long time to understand that that probably was not a good idea. So even in my 45 years from training and practice, we still realize that we don't know everything. We still do things that are later looked at upon as being foolish. Although Confucius once said that don't critique physicians of yesterday, because if they didn't do what they did, probably some of us wouldn't be here today. So we have to be careful about critiquing our ancestors with what they knew. But again, people apply to the supernatural. You know, if you don't know what heals people, what's your logical alternative? You appeal to a power greater than yourself and hope for some divine input. And that's kind of a problem, because if you look at my topic, it's very hard to separate medicine and spirituality as to why people got cured, which may have been by chance. If we go back to the earliest times, which is prehistoric, we have no information except for medical anthropology. Because people didn't have an alphabet, they couldn't write, they did pictorial elements on caves, but we have no other data. We do know several things, two things in particular. One is that they knew how to do something with fractures. When you break a bone, the two pieces are jagged. And when they come together, the body remodels the bone and puts calcium in, and we heal the bone. So they could tell that people had long bone fractures, legs, for example, that had clear signs of a break, but they had clear signs of healing, and they wouldn't have healed if they weren't alive. So we know that our ancestors long ago had figured out some very basic manual medicine. We also know that they practiced something which is called trepanation, which, if you know what I'm talking about, you need like a hole in the head, because it is a hole in your head. People would bore holes in people's skulls, probably to let out evil spirits, we would assume, because they didn't know what was in the skull. They didn't know whether there was a brain in there. They certainly couldn't tell if it was extra blood on top of the brain, called the subdural hematoma, which is why we put holes in heads today. But they did it, and we know people survived, because again, rather than a jagged hole, there was a sign of healing. It had smoothed out. So remarkably enough, they did this, and this was done in medicine for many millennia thereafter, by the way. This is not something which is a once and done. We know that we have evidence distinctly from France going back to, and I'm going to use the Christianic term, from the Jewish background, we always said BCE and CE, not to say Anno Domini, because in the Jewish faith, we don't have a year of our Lord, but I'll just use the more common terminology. And in France from 5000 BC, there was a sign of a person whose head did have the hole and was healed. We also know that they had an amputation that was done around 4900 BC based upon dating the bones. So whether it was a traumatic amputation or an intentional amputation, again, the bone had healed, and we know the person survived the process, however they did so. So initially, who practiced medicine? It wasn't doctors. It was medicine men, shamans, witch doctors, people who had extra knowledge, at least thought to have extra knowledge, had some trust in the community. They were often leaders, and that's kind of who got to do the job. They were often in charge of tribal health. They would use magic formulas, amulets, prayers, any manner of drumming to bring in the aura of healing. What is important is many of these early healers were hands-on. Why do people like chiropractors? Whatever they do or don't do, I'm not going to comment, but they touch you. You can't go to a chiropractor without hands on your body. Think about your own physicians today and whether you're touched or not at all. And so I think, that's something which we'll talk about that we've lost over the years, the hands-on approach. And we found that people did start to understand that there were some things out in nature you could use, herbs, bark, and different things. They would cast spells to ward off evil spirits. It was hard to differentiate, like I said, between what was healed because of good luck, whether what they did had any value, because with the writings over the course of millennia just say this happened and we had a result. Let's see. Okay, the other thing is we have to remember that people back in the day lived about 25 to 40 years if they were lucky. Most common cause of death back then was trauma. If something attacked you or you had a damage to your body, there was no knowledge of how to fix it, or infection. Because there were things back then, whether they were primitive viruses or bacteria. And actually, by the way, until penicillin was developed late in World War II, all we had prior to that were sulfa drugs. So you have to remember that the advent of antibiotics is relatively recent. And now we're, of course, getting resistance from overuse and inappropriate use. But, my mother had meningitis, allegedly, when she was growing up, and she had an allergy to sulfa drugs. And she got nothing. Obviously, she survived. It was viral, because bacterial meningitis would have probably done her in. So until penicillin came along, a great many things that we take for granted today were fatal. And remember that, keeps us humble. We didn't figure out antibiotics until Alexander Fleming had a bowl of an agar plate. He found an area where his bacteria were dying, And rather than just saying, darn it, throwing it away, he said, I wonder what that is in there. It was a penicillin mold. Thus, the first intuition that we could do something with that. And from then we came to where we are today with the synthetic antibiotics that we use so much of. So this is a quick scenario going through the history of medicine. In about 3000 BC, the Mesopotamians were found to have a temple to help heal the injured. Now, by heal, we mean people came for palliative care. They weren't actually doing something that we would think of healing today, but they may have had incantations. They had the sense of being cared for, which again is critical. And these people used prayer and offerings and relics and a variety of things, so far as we can tell from their writings that have survived. Around the same time in Egypt, there was a fellow named Imhotep, who was thought to be the god of medicine. Again, interface between the healers and being gods or godly. And we know from them that they used herbs. They had a very extensive understanding, or at least use of herbal treatments that they had discovered over the course of time by trial and error. So there's a papyrus that's around, the name of which I will not go into, which details at some length the use of these substances in that generation of time. Let's see. They also had subspecialties, which is kind of fascinating. So they had realized that not all body parts are the same. And so the healers, again, using whatever they could, were subdivided into those who might deal with things in the head, the ears, the belly, other parts of the body, which is kind of fascinating. And again, there's so much more about Egyptian medicine and science, but we'll leave it at that because again, I'm doing a fast view through the history. And many countries had the same idea. So in India, at 2000 BC, there was a guy named Dantantari, it meant he was from God. He was deified. He was being part of Brahma. Again, their classic healer was again a god or related to God. And again, that was critical because people back then who had strong beliefs. And obviously, I think if you have a strong belief that something's going to be beneficial for you, it definitely helps. Quick scenario, my wife was a breast cancer survivor of 25 years. When she got her chemo, any of you are old enough to remember Pac-Man, she would envision the chemo drug going through her blood and eating cancer cells. So again, mental visualization is still out there. Whether it helped or not, I can't tell you. She's a long-term survivor of 2A breast cancer. But again, mental imaging is still there. And that's what they had back then. And people had a very strong faith that what was being done was valuable. And again, I'm not so sure we have that anymore. We just say, give me the drug because it's going to heal me and I don't have to think too hard about it. And whether that makes a difference or not, science will probably never establish. In India, we've been through India, sorry, moving on. In the Chinese, I don't have an exact date, there was a guy named Huang Li, who was the Yellow Emperor, who wrote a canon of internal medicine such as he understood at the time. Again, he was an emperor, a person in power, a person who had an aura of respect, the cachet, if you will, of being believed in. And I think that's a theme that goes through all of our ancestors in medicine, a lot of belief in the healer and the healing process, as opposed to just waiting for something to be given to you and assuming you were going to get better. On to the Greeks. The Greeks did not invent everything that we give them credit for. They got a lot from the Babylonians and Egyptians that came by way of written documents, although they kind of tuned it up a little bit. But even in their place, there was a guy named Polemon and Macron, who were two sons of Asclepius, who was a classic god of medicine from the Greek history, the god of medicine. So even there, whatever they were doing, they still believed in the power of a god that imbued these two people who were actually military surgeons with their healing skills. Now, the interesting thing is, by about 460 AD, there was some understanding that medicine could not only be based upon medicine and religion, that there had to be something more. And so we get to Hippocrates, who actually, it is felt much like Shakespeare, was not one person. It was felt that his name encompassed a variety of people who had a certain understanding and way of practicing medicine at the time. It was not one person who came up with everything, maybe including the oath. But he said that illness was a natural rather than supernatural phenomenon, which begins kind of the Western concept of what medicine is. He also had no patience, it is said, with disease as a punishment from the gods. So we're beginning to see, in the turn of the millennium into AD times, that finally people are saying, maybe this is not all about being punished by God, but maybe there is something else happening that we as of yet don't understand. In the Romans, we know they had Galen, who was the founder of experimental physiology, and there was some progress made in also understanding mental illness. He began to separate physical illness and mental illness. Major divide, because in the past, people would have been told they had an evil spirit and probably get a hole in their head for their efforts, I would suspect. Alexandria, after the fall of Rome and Greece, became a major center and a repository for a lot of information. They had the first medical school. They wrote the first treatise on anatomy, such as they understood it. And it was such a good treatise that it actually, through the help of monks keeping track of things during these dark ages, was actually used during the Renaissance, before they understood what they were doing, as at least a bit of information from the ancients. Now, unfortunately, the famous library in Alexandria was destroyed. And we would theorize there was a lot of very useful information in that library, which was lost, and medicine, as with so many things, science, math, a lot of things the Egyptians knew, and so forth, all had to be resurrected in the Renaissance. We lost a huge amount of knowledge at that time. So after the fall of Rome, there was the Dark Ages, as they were called. Probably with the hand of the Catholic Church, I'm just intuiting, learning was not made to be of high esteem. Experimentation was discouraged, and for heaven's sake, originality was a dangerous asset. And we know that people who were original often got burned at the stake, among other things that happened to them and other tortures. By the way, think of the fact that, how long do these stigma last? Well, you don't have to go very far back in American history. Remember the witches up in Salem, who were weighted with a rock, thrown into a body of water, and if they sank, obviously they were witches. If they weren't burned already, if they floated back up again, then I guess it was all okay. Kind of tough. So we don't have to go very far back in even our history as to where people are thought of very badly if they're practicing something. I'm kind of looking at Diana and thinking, what they would have done with the Wiccans back then and what would have been her fate. But fortunately, yeah, she's here today. And so fortunately, we're a bit more savvy, we think. Long may that last. So in the early Middle Ages, having condemned Catholicism or Christianity, they were the ones that kept something alive. Their monks translated the old materials from Greek into Latin and actually Arabic, because we have the Eastern Church, which was speaking Arabic. So we have to credit them with keeping the documents, as with so many things the monks did, that they just scribed and scribed and scribed. They did keep alive some of the old knowledge from primitive times. In addition, many churches were actually, or abbeys, priories were actually hospitals. Nuns and they priests took care of the ill people. Again, hospice type of care, not curing them, but giving them a place to come where they would feel comfort and the warmth of somebody being just caring about them, not just being thrown to the side of the road, which was often the case. When you're ill, with suspicion, often get away from us. You have an evil aura about you. We also know, we can't forget about the Muslim Empire, which went from Persia to Syria to Spain. There were many rather brilliant discoveries, some actually from the Judaic end of things, and it turned out that the Jewish, Muslim, and Christian physicians or learners all worked together. It was actually a remarkable time. You think about the Islamic Empire as being very negative because of conquest, but once they had conquest, they were relatively open with people living there and practicing liberally. They also began to understand chemistry. They began to prepare medications with some sense of understanding and value. One thing is a pitch for Judaism. There was a fellow named Moses ben Maimon, we call him Maimonides, and there are hospitals named after him. Of all things, he was you remember Saladin, who was the one who defeated Richard III and took over the Holy Land in Jerusalem. Well, his physician was Maimonides. Interesting quirk of a Jewish physician taking care of the basically the ruler over so much of Islamic territory. Okay. Yeah, so, and by the way, the Christians used wealth to fund the efforts at healthcare. So again, charity was very, very helpful, but remember, they had no scientific knowledge. If you asked them what a kidney was, they would have no idea, a heart, lungs. We hadn't gotten to that point yet. We didn't have the knowledge that came later with Harvey and other people. So still primitive medicine, but edging towards what we understand today. Then the Renaissance occurred. And at that point, finally, medical providers were authorized by civic authority, not by religious authority, which is what had happened previously. Scientific thought made a major advance. Finally, faith and medicine split apart, and faith went over there someplace, and science went over there someplace, which we'll come to. So you have scientific thought, procedures, critical theory, skepticism of religious ideas, which was part of the ethic of the time. There's a comment which is really interesting. We're battlefield medics, and it was now realized that the medics saved people's lives, the priest eased their passing. So finally, we are separating what medicine can do and what religion can do, what its role is in the care of individuals. But medical knowledge exploded with no reliance upon God or spirituality at all. So we come to modern times, and this is kind of my closing shtick here. In America, doctors were often, going back maybe several generations, were thought to be godlike and invulnerable. We were given the role of godliness, but we didn't seek it. I would like to point out that we weren't after being thought as gods, but that's what the public began to think of us because we healed people, and healing was thought to be a divine ability. India said doctors are sacred, as gods on earth. But again, this was thrown at us. It wasn't something we were seeking from anybody. A couple of bits of humor here, in case anyone's going to fall asleep. Ben Franklin said, God heals and doctors take the fee. Interesting. There's a joke. What's the difference between doctors and God? God doesn't think he's a doctor. And one more, which I've heard before. So a doctor dies and he goes up to heaven. He's lucky. And he is in the line and is not patient. So he runs to the front of the line, jumps the line. And someone says, who's that? Well, it's just a doctor playing God. So there are many jokes that kind of come out of that. I don't think we want to be like that, but that's just kind of what's been put upon us. So coming from the Jewish faith, doctors in Judaism were thought to be instruments of God based upon Exodus 15:26, where it says, I am the Lord your healer. Doctors were called roteh cholim, which are those who heal the sick. And I would point out in Judaism, everyone knows about the rules of the Torah, Shabbat, things you shouldn't do, you don't do any work. But in Judaism, as I was taught, every rule in the Torah can be violated to save a human life. So there may be other rules, but the work of saving a human life is above all law in Judaism. And pertinent to that, which we'll enjoy, in Judaism, it is felt that the baby, the fetus, is a part of the mother until birth. Until the baby comes out, the baby is part of the mother. And that's why Judaism has always had a very liberal view of abortion, because it is thought to be the mother's choice. In fact, I was told by somebody that she chose Jewish doctor to be her OB when she had all of her kids, because regardless of the hospital, she knew that doctor would preserve her life if needed at the expense of the baby, which makes sense. If the mother's still alive, she can and have more children. In the Catholic view of life, you save the baby at the expense of the mother, you have no child bearer left. Just a difference in philosophy. So we come to recent times, and this is a sad part of medicine where we have to come full circle. We've talked about the influence of godliness, and spirituality for so much of medical history. When the Renaissance came, medicine went into science, lock, stock, and barrel. We lost a lot of our humanity, even allowing for the use of computers today, which has affected people. But we lost the touch. We lost the hands-on approach to medicine that was certainly part of my early life, because I came before CT scans and MRI scans and a lot of the modern technology, no cardiac catheterization. So what the medical schools found is that their trainees did not know how to deal with that which they could not solve. They didn't know how to deal with terminal disease, whether it's cancer, trauma, infection. They had lost the ability or the facility to know what to say to people when there was nothing else to do medically. And so now gradually, and up to now, 75% of medical schools actually have courses in the third or fourth year in the end of medical school to teach the students how to deal with these issues, how to have a spiritual or humanistic approach to people where we don't have an answer. In my career, I can't say I enjoyed it, but I felt a great deal of positivity when I could help a family adjust to the death and dying process. It was just part of what I had to do. It's part of what a doctor has to do. So, the comment I would do is, what do you do when science has nothing to offer? And we have to come full circle and come back to some of the spirituality, if you will, the humanism that was so prevalent in our ancestors, because they didn't have science. And regardless of their incantations or dances or spells, they were with the patient. And the patient had a great deal of faith in what they were doing. They probably touched the person and were around them. My final comment is, I may have told some of these things to you before. When Lincoln was shot in the Ford Theater and was taken across the street to a hotel, they brought in all these eminent local physicians who back in that time couldn't do a whole lot. Anything that was in your head, your lungs, or your abdomen, we had no idea about, even with basic anatomy. Surgery had not reached the point. Chloroform was all we had for anesthesia, a little bit of ether. So the last person who physically touched Lincoln was the youngest practitioner in the room, and he was holding Lincoln's hand. And the more senior doctor said to him, "Why are you doing that?" And he gave a quintessential answer, which is very moving. He said, "It's the only thing I can do." And so we as physicians must remember, when all is said and done, we are humanistic. We should touch our patients. We should make connection to our patients and not be seduced by science purely. So thank you. It's been lengthy. I tried to cover a lot of turf. We're going to do our final hymn, and then I'll have time for discussion and sharing of anybody who has any commentary about their personal experiences with the medical field. And the closing hymn is, I think, appropriate. It's 331. Life is the greatest gift of all. And please stand as you're beginning. Okay, in the interest of time, Rick, I think I'm going to combine feedback with the sharing of joys and concerns. It kind of didn't get on here. There it is. I'm going to kind of put those two things together. I kind of think that would be helpful. So if we can turn off the video, and you may feel free to come up, or I can give you a microphone if you have any thoughts either about what I have said or anything that's a joy and concern in your life at this time. favor of extinguishing the chalice. We have the extinguishing word, new order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and our hands. I did have a benediction in here, but I have a better idea, says Ford. There's one more oath that I didn't get to, and I really wanted to include this. We spoke of Maimonides, and he wrote an oath as well. This is the final of the oaths that one could look at. The eternal providence has appointed thee to watch over the life and health of thy creatures. May the love of my heart actuate me at all times. May neither avarice nor miserliness nor thirst for glory or for a great reputation engage my mind. The enemies of truth and philanthropy could easily deceive me and make me forgetful of my lofty aim of doing good to thy creatures and thy children. May I never see in the patient anything but a fellow creature in pain. Grant me strength, time, and opportunity always to connect what I have acquired, always to extend its domain, for knowledge is immense, and the spirit of man can extend indefinitely to enrich itself daily with new requirements. Today, he can discover the errors of yesterday, and tomorrow he can obtain a new light upon what he thinks of himself to be sure of today. O God, thou hast appointed me to watch over the life and death of thy creatures. Here am I ready for my vocation, and now I turn myself to that calling. Blessed be, Namaste, Shalom. And go to the pianist, so it's time to go in. You're gonna have a sugar high, unfortunately, so what we have for snacks is not medically prescribed. Yeah. Then